You're not watching this video to know if you want to play Deathblade, do you? You already know that you're going to play Deathblade in Lost Ark. You just want to see how to play it and if your choice was the right one. Who are we kidding? Of course you made the right choice. Anyway, so Deathblade is probably the closest thing to an assassin we will have until Reaper releases, which might also be a class of interest to you if you like this type of classes. Deathblade has a total of not one, not two, but three. Yes, 3 blades. And one of them is actually huge. How is she even carrying this? Obviously, the Deathblade uses all 3 blades in the combat and just stabs enemies a lot and slashes and, well, does what someone with lots of knives does, I guess. Anyway, let's talk about how to play Deathblade in a nutshell. Honestly, Deathblade is pretty forward in terms of how to play the class. You use abilities and you fill up a gauge that you then reuse once it's full. By using the gauge, you then get various buffs while it is active. If you reactivate the gauge, you unleash a powerful hit. But as you might or might not yet know, every class needs to use a class engraving to unleash their true and final form. So does the Deathblade. As always, we get the choice of 2 class engravings. But yeah, one of the 2 class engravings that Deathblade has is literally not used at all. Before I made this video, I again checked the statistics and only 3 people out of the top 200 in Korea are using it. So I decided not to even explain or go over it, since it's not a viable choice at all for Deathblade. So we are forced into a single playstyle, which is a Dancing Explosion playstyle. Sounds fancy, but what does it do? So Dancing Explosion is basically making your gauge buff last even outside of its use. Please note this is the Russian translated version and is maybe a bit scuffed. When the Deathblade enters the combat trance, orbs do not drain for 2 seconds. After using Concentration of Will, the Deathblade gains an effect that lasts 30 seconds and increases her attack and movement speed by 12, as well as attack power by 12, 24 or 36% depending on the amount of filled spheres at the time of using the skill. Once you enter your combat stance, you want to reuse your identity before your gauge drops to 2 orbs, because then your buff will be less. And that's pretty much it for your gauge management. Once it's full, you use it again and enjoy some big damage, attack speed and movement speed buff. So managing Blade's identity isn't very hard or crazy in any way, but that's also not where the difficulty of Deathblade lies in. No, that comes in with its playstyle and skills. So let's go over the playstyle and the rotation. If you take a look at the Deathblade's use skills, you will notice that all or most of them are actually bag attacks. So in order to maximize your damage output, you will be hugging the back of the boss, which can be difficult at times. If you do not manage that, you will not only lose damage from the skill, but also from your engraving backstabbing master. So it is extremely important to hit the target from the back. Even though the identity doesn't really imply that Deathblade is burst oriented, it actually is. The rotation is pretty simple. You use your debuff, your party buff, and then go ham with all of your skills if possible. I will go over that debuff and buff later. So let's have a look at the blade rotation. The idea behind this rotation is to maximize the gauge gain while Cloak of Blades is active, and to deal most of your damage in that window, so you gain as many orbs as possible to reactivate your buffs. As you might also see, Deathblade actually isn't a very fast class. It uses many charging abilities that require you to stand still before unleashing your damage. So now let's talk about my opinion on Deathblade. Deathblade looks absolutely cool, not a question. The 3 different blades makes it look very fancy, and the animations also look really nice. It feels very fun and flashy to play, if I might say so. Yet there is obviously a big problem with this class in my opinion, and that's the short burst window from the back. Back attacks aren't as easy as they sound, especially in Legion content where bosses just move randomly away from you and literally make you want to cry because of that. So once you start your burst window and might have hit your first skill, the boss just jumps away. And then your window got, well, yeah, you know what I mean. And that's what makes this class quite hard to play properly. It's not just about stabbing away, no, it's about proper positioning and proper usage of your burst window. The window is quite long on top of requiring back positionals, which is something that is just extremely hard to play properly. Of course, if you are the best player in Lostark, this is just another day at the job for you. But for me, this is a deal breaker. I am someone that always wants to deal as much damage as possible, and that is really tough with Deathblade. On top of that, the class was lacking damage recently, but it got buffed in Korea. No idea yet how these buffs make it rank now compared to other classes. So for me, Deathblade is a class that you master or don't play. I would not make a null because it's just too sweaty to play properly. If I would want to main it, I could see myself playing this class, but then also only this class and no other because it requires such a specific set of skills to play properly. But it just looks really damn cool, which, well, might just make me play it anyway, to be honest. But enough about my opinion. Let's now talk about engraving, stats, and obviously the skills you want to use. For stats, with Dancing Explosion, you want to focus on specialty to generate as much gauge as possible, so your buff never runs out and your big identity hit deals more damage. The faster you fill up your orbs, the more cooldown you're also getting for yourself, so it's very important. For your engravings, you have a solid choice what to run on Deathblade. Obviously, the most important ones are Dancing Explosion and Grudge, but those are followed by Supercharge and Backstabbing Master, which are also really important. Your other final choices could be Sharp Blunt, Curse Doll, or Adrenaline. All of those engravings in some form or way benefit the Deathblade. But enough, let's talk about the skills. Your utility and movement skill is Axle. It can be used to jump over bosses and get to their back. It's in general just a movement tool for you, not a damage tool. Now let's talk about Cutting Blades, which is another movement tool, but also a debuff. If you hit the enemy with this skill, everyone in your party will deal 12% more damage from the front and the back. This is extremely crucial for yourself, but also for some other classes that use back or frontal attacks. Your other party utility is Cloak of Blades, and when used increases movement and attack speed of your allies and the regeneration rate of your orbs for yourself while it's active. All other skills that I'm going over are just pure DPS skills. We use Hand of Avesta for gauge generation and solid damage, and on top of that it brings impairment and destruction. Next up is Sword Art, another charge ability with decent damage and gauge generation. Your last and longest charging ability is Headhunting, deals massive damage. Then we have Two-Handed Grip, which uses your big sword and also just deals damage. The last skill we have in our arsenal is Hurricane Rush, which is your only hold skill, meaning you have to hold it for the full duration until it's over to deal the full damage. And that's it! Now you know how to play Blade properly. Obviously, only in a nutshell. The class is very fun to play and honestly is also, I believe, the most popular class for the Western audience. Bear in mind, once you go down the route of playing Blade, you are comparable to Yasuo or Yone players in League of Legends. Sorry, I don't make the rules. But if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe and check out my other videos or even my other In a Nutshell series if you are unsure what to play for Lost Ark. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you a great day wherever you live.